The reading this morning is Genesis 12, verses 1 to 9. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarah and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran. And they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they had come to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on by stages towards the Negeb. Amen.
Thank you, Hilary and Sophia. As Peter said earlier in the service, we're starting a new series this week, The Call of God. And we're looking at some of the Old Testament characters who definitely had some sense of calling in different contexts. Today we're looking at Abram. Now, it gets complicated for me because he's Abraham to start with and he becomes Abraham. They sound very similar. And I'm going to get confused if I attempt to remember to say Abraham at the right time and then convert to Abraham later on in the story. So, forgive me, I'm just going to stick with Abraham, which I might mumble enough that you might think it's one or the other anyway. So, Abram means exalted father, great father. Abraham means father of nations. And the story of Abraham is one of beginnings. It's the beginning of God's direct relationship with Abraham initially and then spanning out into the nation of Israel. So I thought we'd get a few bits of information about Abraham at the beginning of the talk so that we understand where we are in the Bible. This is in Genesis chapter 12, the section that Hilary just read. And before then, all we've had is the creation and the fall, Adam and Eve. We've had the story of Noah and the flood. And we've had the Tower of Babel, where the nations were scattered across the earth with different languages. So it's very early on in the story, and this character, Abram, comes along. It's interesting to know that he was actually 75 when he moved from Canaan, but he lived to 175. So this age thing, they say age is just a number, don't they? I don't think we can necessarily think, well, 75 for Abraham is necessarily the same as what we might feel like at 75. Yeah? Anybody here want to admit to being 75 or over? There's a few hands. I think Abraham was probably middle-aged in the context of his whole life. From age 75, he was going to live to 175. If you read through the early chapters of the Bible, there are some very large numbers of years that people lived. And we don't really understand why people lived longer in that period. But over time, those numbers reduced, and we sort of settled around, 100, 120 is very long life to live these days. So Abraham was 75. Let's say he was middle-aged at this point, mature. He certainly wasn't a young man when God called him. He's married to Sarah. Sarah is his half-sister. When I was reading through, I'd forgotten that. There are a couple of occasions when he tries to pass his wife off as his sister for some reason that really doesn't make a lot of sense. He thought it was a cunning plan. It would work out. It didn't work out well. If you are married to your sister, don't try and pretend that she's not your wife. But yeah, he was married to his half-sister. They had no children. Sarah was barren. We're not told at this point when he's age 75 and Sarah's about 10 years younger. We're not told that she was beyond childbearing age, but we are told that she was barren. She had no children. Abram, as I said, means exalted father, and the promises that were given, there were two promises in the section that Hilary read. I will make you a great nation was one, so it was about land and where they would live. And the second one, when he'd actually moved, later on in the passage, to your offspring, I will give this land. To your offspring, I will give this land. So a large nation, a lot of descendants, and the land. But he didn't have any children at this stage. So it's an interesting start to a story, isn't it? What was his calling? What was he actually called to? Well, I've got a little map here. It's not working. Tara, would you mind moving it on for me? Thank you. So, he actually, in the passage that we read, he moves from Haran, which is at the top there, in modern-day Syria. He moves from Haran down into Canaan. But the story actually begins a little earlier. If we look at the chapter just before the section we read, it talks about his father, Terah. Terah took his son Abraham, his grandson Lot, and his daughter-in-law Sarah, the wife of Abraham, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans. Ur's a little bit on the right there, next to the Persian Gulf. I always think it shows a certain lack of imagination in the naming of this place. What are we going to call it? But that's where they started. And Ur is a place that's been excavated. And it was a large city. It was a large, bustling city. The king of the area lived in that place. So he had his royal palaces. There was a big temple, a ziggurat temple, all those steps going up to it. It was a sort of beginning. This was the sort of civilizations were developing and people groups. So it was a bustling place to be. But for some reason, Terah, the father of Abraham, moved, and it says, to go to Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. So we don't get any more information than that. We don't know why he set off from Ur to Canaan. You might think, well, why didn't he just go directly there? Well, there was a big desert in the way, so they had to take the long way around, follow the river, follow the trading routes, and they got to Haran, which is about halfway on the trip, and they stopped there. Did God call Terah initially? Possibly. We don't know. Maybe the call of Abraham began in Ur when he was there, and it was him who persuaded his father that they should move to Canaan. But for whatever reason, they only got to Haran and they stopped at that point. And I think that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because I think for some of us, a sense of calling, maybe we don't follow through on. Maybe there have been occasions when we feel like God has called us to something and we've got in the right direction, or we've started moving in that direction but never really fulfilled it. Possibly that was the beginning of Abraham's journey. But we don't dwell on that because that's only speculation. The fact is that Abraham did make the move then from Haran, leaving his father and the rest of his family behind. And he moved down to Canaan. And then there begins a sort of whole series of moves within Canaan. He settles at Shechem first. Then he moves to somewhere between Bethel and Ai. Another poor attempt at a name. What are we going to call this city? Eh? Then he moves on further down to the south, to the Negev region, just in the south of the Canaan area. It's like he's not quite sure where to settle, and he's exploring the land. And then there's a famine, and he moves into Egypt because that's where the food is. And then later on, he moves back into Canaan, and then moves around again. So all these moving around, it put me in mind of a program that we watched recently called Destination X. Anybody else watch that program? Yeah, I can see a few hands. Yeah, this is one of these programs where they get a lot of contestants together and they have to do various things. They were all put in a coach with the windows blacked out and driven around Europe, given various tasks, and they had to try and discover where they were. So at the end of each episode, they had to put an X on the map to say where they were. Okay? And it was surprisingly difficult when you couldn't see what was around you. It reminded me of Abraham's journey here. He didn't quite know where he was going. But I thought I'd try you out on a little exercise here. I couldn't arrange a bus in time, big enough. So we're going to have to imagine this. This is an imaginary bus that we're all in. And it only goes in straight lines, following the compass, north, south, east, and west. And it travels over the sea perfectly well. So we're going to start where we are, here in Solihull, and we're going to travel 450 miles east. 450 miles east from here. Where do you reckon we are? Any ideas? Sam's working it out here. Yeah. When you say it's that way, are you thinking on a map in your head, or? Okay, Sam's checking it out here. Yeah. But where do you think we are? What country do you think we're in? Germany? Any particular location, you think? Berlin. Spot on. Well done. Who was that? Was that you, Phil? Very good. Berlin. It surprised me that we're on a level with Berlin, but we are on the eastern part of Germany. Okay, so now we're leaving Berlin. We're going 750 miles south from Berlin. 750 miles south. Very good. Who said that? Excellent. Excellent, yeah. Rome is roughly south from Berlin. One more for you. We're starting in Rome. We're going 350 miles east. 350 miles east from Rome. Tirana, spot on. Oh no, not a lucky guess. You thought about that. You thought, yes, we've got our group in Tirana at the moment in Albania. So we've arrived with them in our imaginary coach. We think about Abraham's journey, and I wanted to sort of really relate some of this to us, because it's all very well to think about, an Old Testament character, and all this happened 4,000 years ago. 2,000 years to go back to the time when Jesus was around, and then 1,000 years before that, roughly, King David and the sort of, the Israelite nation in its sort of glorious period during the Old Testament. And then 1,000 years before that is when this calling of Abraham was given, 1,000 years, so 4,000 years ago. How is it relevant to us? Well, I think it is, because the same God who called Abraham is also the God who's called us, is also the God who we relate to. I feel very respectful of Abraham because he didn't have all the stories of the Old Testament. He didn't have Jesus. He didn't have any of that to look back on. He simply had a faith in God. And he was trying to work out what that meant in his life. Setting out on a big journey, going to a different place. It's quite daunting, isn't it? You feel for those people who've gone to Albania, especially those gone for the first time. There'll be some trepidation in there, won't there? And I'm sure that would have been the case for Abraham as he set off. Our home group sometimes meets at Mark and Judy's house, and we see the pictures that Mark has painted up on the walls. And Mark has been thinking recently about pilgrimage in his sort of artwork. And some of the pictures really sort of caught my imagination in the context of Abraham and this journey. So I've got some of Mark's pictures with me this morning to illustrate the points. And this first one, well, I've cheated a bit because this isn't part of Mark's pilgrimage. This isn't part of Mark's pilgrimage collection, if you like. But it does speak to me of this concept of setting out on a journey, setting sail. Now, I'm not saying Abraham sailed to Canaan. He didn't. But I think you can see the ship, you can see the choppy waters, you can see the rocks, that sense of danger. I think it captures something that says, it's a new adventure. It's an exciting start. And what does faith look like when we're in those moments in our life when we're beginning something new? If you think back over your life, perhaps it's current, but certainly in the past, maybe there have been times when you've had this experience of setting out on a new adventure. What does faith look like in that context? I think it looks like this. I don't know how this will go, but I trust in you. I don't know how this will go, but I trust in you. Does that relate to you? Can you relate to that sort of experience? I think it's a great adventure to actually begin the journey of faith with God himself. I don't know how this will go, but I trust in you. I like to do things a little bit differently. So I thought, well, how can I get people involved in this experience of Abraham? So I thought, if your name begins with A, if you've got an A in your first name, would you stand up for me? Oh, that's quite a few. That's good. Okay. Now, you represent Abraham, okay? Because you've got an A in your name. And what I want you to do, you know how we always sit in the same place in church? I'm going to ask you to leave the comfort of your section and go to a different section, okay? This is daunting, isn't it? You can, if you wish, collect your family and take them with you, or you can leave them behind, I don't mind. But would you like to just move and find and settle into a new area to get the experience of what it is to be able? I thought about this. I thought, well, if I ask everybody to do this, we'll end up all the people over there, over here, and the other way around. So Okay. You get to meet some new people as well. Or maybe you're just going to talk to the same people who came with you. I don't know. But you get to experience what it's like in a new area. In a new area. For Abraham, that was an adventure, and it's different, and it feels uncomfortable slightly. We're going to move on 3 chapters to chapter 15. Abraham is now 85. 10 years have passed since that initial calling. And the story we read about in chapter 15 is Abraham and Sarah, they've still got this promise. It's been renewed. God's spoken to Abraham a number of times and said, you will be a great nation. And Abraham's still thinking, but I don't have any children. And in chapter 15, Abraham tries to do something to move things along. He and Sarah have a discussion, and she says, well, use my maidservant, Hagar. Take her, have a child with her. And then, then God's promise will be fulfilled. And, well, it doesn't work out well. This wasn't God's plan. But they do have a child, Abraham and Hagar. His name is Ishmael, and God responds to that situation. God doesn't abandon him because he's gone off plan. God responds to that situation, and God says he will make Ishmael a great nation as well. And the religion of Islam traces its roots back through Ishmael to Abraham and reveres Abraham as a great patriarch of their faith. But Abraham had weakened in his faith, I would suggest, at this point. But you can understand it, can't you? 10 years have passed. This promise still hadn't been fulfilled, and he thought, well, this is something I can do. This is something I can do to move things along. And thank you, Tara. This is a picture that I think captures something of this experience. Not that there was any rail travel in Abraham's time, but just in the sense of, to me, this picture speaks of the anxiety that I feel sometimes when I'm on a rail journey. You can see the board up there, can't you, with the train times on. You know those big stations you go to, and you're really not sure, because you've never been there before, which platform you're supposed to be on and what time. And all the people are moving around and rushing about, and you're not sure where you are and where you're supposed to be going. And there's a certain anxiety. And I think, for me, this picture talks about pilgrimage in the sense of uncertainty. Because our journey with God is not all about strong callings. It's about moments when we're uncertain and we don't understand what's happening. So I'm going to put this picture down here to help us think about those moments in your life. Again, perhaps it's somewhere you are now, an uncertainty. What should I be doing? If you move on to the next one, Tara. What does faith look like in this context? I think it looks like this. I don't understand what's happening, but I trust in you. I don't understand what's happening, but I trust in you. This is probably the hardest part of our faith, isn't it? This is the hardest part. When we just have to accept what God is doing in our life. And it's difficult. We move on to chapter 17 of Abraham's journey, his pilgrimage. Because I think it's important to recognize that although he had his calling when he was 75, it only started then. His calling was throughout his whole life. His calling was to dwell in the land of Canaan. He wasn't there to possess it, to attack anybody. He wasn't there to conquer the land. He was just there to dwell. He wasn't there to evangelize. Simply there to dwell. That was his calling. And that was 100 years that he existed in that state, in Canaan, following through. And I think the next picture, I like this one particularly, because I think it says something about Abraham moving on. He did eventually, in chapters 17 and beyond, he did eventually have his son, Isaac. And this was the point when his name was changed to Abraham, father of nations. And this is the point when he started to see God's fulfillment of his promise. He would never see the full picture, would he? He would never see the descendants. He would never see the land possessed by his descendants. That isn't something that was part of his story. But I like this picture because in the context of pilgrimage, it isn't all about movement and travel and the next big thing. There are times when we just stop and reflect. Just be. Just be. What does faith look like in this context? I may not see the whole picture, but I trust in you. There's another story in Abraham's life. It's a confusing story in some ways, the story of Isaac and the sacrifice, because once God had given him this precious son, later on, sometime later, God calls him to say, okay, well, I want you to go and sacrifice him. Now, the story unravels in the end that doesn't happen, and God provides a substitute. But for Abraham, that's quite a moment, a test, isn't it? That's quite a test. I think he would say, I may not see the whole picture, but I trust in you. I think this is an evidence of the faith of the man, Abraham. But yes, the next slide, the last slide, please, Tara. In Hebrews chapter 11, we get this wonderful array of the Old Testament characters and their faith and the story of their faith. And it starts with this verse. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. To clarify, the ancients isn't those people who put their hand up to be 75 and over. It is the people of the Old Testament, the ancient people of the Old Testament. But I wonder if we could change this to, this is what the current people, this is what the people of Shirley Baptist are commended for. Being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Because we are all called to dwell in this land. There is a sense in which as we choose to follow Jesus and take up his kingdom, we immediately become part of what people living in a sense in a foreign country. That this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. Anyone remember that song? Yeah, Jim Reeves, I think, used to sing it. My dad died this summer, and we had that song as we were bringing the coffin in. This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? This sense that we're on a pilgrimage, we're in a foreign land, we're living through the uncertainty. We're trying to find those moments when we can say, I can't see the whole picture, but I still trust in you.